My husband harvested up a deer today, so I'm gonna be canning it. You can see the fresh meat behind me here. Some of it we froze, but this is what we left to can. So come along and I'll show you guys how to can it because it is so easy and so good. For this recipe, as always, we're going to reference back to my old ball canning book. And you can look down here where it talks about cold packing meat. Pack raw meat into hot jars. Add salt only or other seasoning, of course. The meat will make its own juice, so you do not need to put beef broth or anything in here. Process all meats immediately after packing. And on page 7 is where my processing times are for meat. So you can see the wild game down there is 90 minutes for quarts and 75 minutes for pints. And that's for raw meat, which means this is going to be a cold pack recipe. We're not going to cook the meat ahead of time. Okay, let's do this. So here's all of my fresh meat. You can see that I've got some fat and some silver skin and some bad spots. So as I'm cutting this up, you don't have to do this, but I do because I don't like the gristle in there. I'm gonna cut all that stuff off, cut it into decent sized hunks, and I'm gonna pack it into these jars. I'll push it down in there with a wooden spoon, and then to top each jar, I'm gonna put a half a teaspoon of salt, and I'm also gonna use some beef broth base. This is really good because it has a lot of flavor to it. This is the powdered. If you don't have the powdered kind, you can also just get the cubes and cut those in half and put a half cube in each one. And we're going to leave 1 1/4 inch headspace on top of the jars. Got my jars packed. Now I'm just gonna grab my wooden spoon here and I'm just gonna go through and each one I'm just gonna push that meat down, and then I'll have to add a little bit more meat to each one. That way it leaves just that 1 1/4 inch headspace. And then I'll add my salt and my beef broth base. That's done. Now we're gonna add our seasoning. It's done. Now we're ready to can it. So we're gonna wipe those rims, we're gonna add our lids and bands, and we're gonna put it in the pressure canner. Okay, the jars are in there and we're ready to go. So make sure you follow your pressure canner's instructions. Mine calls for water in the bottom, which I already put in there, and mine requires venting. So I'm gonna bring all the water inside to a boil. Once the steam starts coming out of this, I'm gonna set my timer for 10 minutes. And now we're venting, so I'll set that timer for 10 minutes. Timer's up, so now I'm gonna put my weight on, and you'll see that pressure start to rise. And there we are at 10 pounds pressure. As always, you want to adjust your pressure based on your elevation. We live at 1,000 feet or less, so we'll do it at 10 pounds pressure. And you also want to make sure you're watching this because this is going to cook for 90 minutes. You'll notice every now and then that the pressure might go down a little bit or up a little bit. So make very small adjustments on your temperature to try to maintain that at 10 pounds pressure. And the timer's up. So I just turned my heat off. And I'm not gonna do anything. I'm gonna let that completely cool down on its own until the pressure comes down to 0. Then I'll take my jars out. And there they are. I just pulled them out of the pressure canner and they look great.